Welcome to Law Excellence. As final phase of elections have culminated, the newspapers are flooded with exit polls. But what is in it for an UPSC aspirant? So let's examine the utility of this topic. More than anything else, the application and solvability of questions in prelims and mains. So shall we begin? Okay, so with this exit polls, before beginning to the topic, these are two questions, one of prelims and another of mains. Just pause it and have a look at these questions. The statement says, exit poll is a post-election poll which is conducted when an elector walks out after casting his vote. This is the statement one. And the second statement says, opinion poll is a kind of research survey which is conducted to find out the public opinion after the elections. This is a typical assertion reasoning question which is common to appear in prelims these days according to the latest pattern. After the discussion, try to attempt this question and answer in the comments. So if we move on, the another mains question which is necessarily would be solved after this discussion. It says, compare and contrast exit polls with opinion poll and identify ethical challenges and provide them with the measures to address. Hopeful that after this discussion, you'll be able to address these two questions. So, as we move on to the topic, the first thing I would like to express is the four topics which broadly we are going to discuss. First being the difference of exit polls from opinion polls. The second being whether these opinion polls are certain. Are they with 100% surety? The third one is it a hurdle to privacy of freedom of expression of a normal citizen? And the final one is about ethical and legal angle of these exit polls. So, starting from the first one, the opinion poll is usually conducted months before the election commences. All that they would look for is one, to capture the emotions. When I say emotions, things like pro-incumbency, anti-incumbency, or the partisan nature of siding a party or other or any other independent candidate for say. Such things are taken rather than a proper outcome-based analysis. The second thing is the timeline. It's before the elections commence or any vote being polled. So, time is before elections. When I say before elections, it's before the first phase of election. Okay. Then the third one is, again, this is outcome of first two. So the third one is proximity or probability. Because this is far away in time than exit polls. Because exit polls are conducted immediate after election. Again, this is after election when I say. This after election is contrasting this. Is it just capturing the emotion? No. The exit poll would attempt with a questionnaire which says not just the emotion but the outcome. The questions would be more straightforward, that whom did you vote or whom would you expect to win and with what margin. So these three differences broadly summarize the difference between opinion poll and exit poll. If you're clear with this, let's move on to the next part. As exit polls predict, will they be accurate? Will they be certain enough to predict at least the broad probability of who would win? The answer would be the psephology itself being the science of a statistical study of politics, which is empirical. When I say empirical, it is data-based analysis. So, to some extent, if the scientific method is followed properly without any biases, it can bring you the proximity more than the opinion poll, but it is still not certain. It is just probability based on data. As usual, in any empirical analysis, it all depends on the type of data and the accuracy of data to avoid biases. So now the question comes, what kind of biases could creep in to make the probability away from reality? So the first one is conformity bias. What does it mean? What does conformity bias mean? It's all about confirming the predetermined goal we want. For example, if you want a particular party A to win, you would just cross-check whether A is winning or not. The question would be whether did you vote for the party A? If not, why? So with the type of questions, this conformity bias is very common in exit polls. The second thing is the size of sample. If the sample is very much small, suppose per se if crores of votes being polled across India, if you just survey just tens of votes per constituency, there is very less probability that you would get the proximity to the actual result. Then, more than size, it's the diversity. If you just ask the questions, to only one type of audience who are pro a particular party, you would again get a wrong result in your exit polls. So these things, if avoided, would give you the best outcome, or which is near to actual result. So next time when you think about the authenticity of exit polls, think about the data that they collect. I don't think any agency would give you the raw data they have collected. So with this not giving of data, the next question could be answered. When they don't give the data in raw format, the question of privacy of a citizen is less harmed. Again, one common norm, at least the most famous agencies are following, which is part of the data privacy bill, which is not yet passed in India, is minimum non-personal data approach. Let me explain what it is. A common apprehension to anyone who is expressing their opinions is, what if the party coming in the rule is not the party which I have voted, and if they target me based on my opinion which I have expressed, if they collect the data of the users who have expressed the data and if they target me, this apprehension is removed because it is not the personal data, it's a non-personal data that is collected. That means the user name or identity is destroyed. It's just the count of the people who expressed pro against is collected and tabulated before analyzing. And it is very much minimal. The unnecessary encroachment into the personal data is avoided, and this data approach will give you the outcome for the exit polls, but it will not reveal the identity or any clue that could reach to a particular pro or against candidate who is voting or expressing the opinion. So if this is ensured, then the apprehension of privacy breach is removed. And again, does it infringe the freedom of expression? If you put blanket ban on the exit polls, probably it could infringe the freedom of expression. But there are only few restrictions by Election Commission and also statutorily under Representation of People's Act. So that way we would move on to the next part to identify the ethical and legal concerns, and we would address them. So if you look at the ethical concerns, the first one that comes is influence of the exit polls on next phases. As election in a country like India, which is very vast, is conducted in multiple phases, if the outcome of one phase is adversely affecting the opinions of a swing voter. When I say swing voter, the voter who is not yet decided or a loyalist to a particular party. If he changes his opinion based on these exit polls, that influence will impact, or it would be said, not a free and fair election. So that influence has to be curbed, and that is one of the ethical angle. And the second one is media opinions. It's nothing but again a kangaroo court indirectly that is being conducted by a media agency, as most of the media today is not an independent media. At least it's the opinion of the majority that media would cater, because it's again is accountable to its shareholders and its profit-making agency rather than the people who are common audience as citizens. So this is another one. This could also be covered under the media ethics in your ethics. Then another problem that comes here is the larger one. Is it violating the Model Code of Conduct or any part of Representation of People's Act? Then it comes with Section 126A of 1951 Act of Representation of People's Act. This says, this is actually the proper codified version of putting restrictions on exit polls. It is not the blanket ban, but the restriction. The restriction says from commencement of first phase. The wording says from the first phase till 30 minutes or half an hour after the last phase. This phase should not be utilized to express any exit polls opinion, and this is proper codified version, which is the legal angle, which also forms a solution to most of the ethical concerns that we have raised. So if we are able to follow this, of course, this being enforceable, unlike Model Code of Conduct, can be taken to courts. But there's another provision where Election Commission would say, according to 329 of Indian Constitution, the Article 329 says, Election Commission can say, before we deliver any of our judgment, please don't interfere to Supreme Court. So this objection that rise from Election Commission can stop any courts from interfering. Hope that we understood the concerns, hurdles, and these legal provisions in Constitution and Act are more essential, and these are the solutions. Now, can we move back to the question that we posed earlier before start of this video? This is the question. The question says, exit poll is a post-poll election. Yes, it is after the election, which is conducted when elector walks out after the casting vote, his or her vote. It's right. The second statement says, opinion poll is a kind of research survey which is conducted to find out the public opinion after the elections. Here's the catch. It's not after the elections, but before. If you have focused in the first part of the video, you would understand this is where it's wrong. So when the second statement is wrong, the option would be first statement is true, and second statement is false. Hope that you have commented the same answer. And let's move on to the mains question which we have posed. The very first topic helps you to compare and contrast the exit polls with opinion polls. When I say compare and contrast, you have to measure some of the similarities in a tabular form, and then would come with the contrasting element which would differentiate. Then we have identified 3 ethical measures, if you see, ethical hurdles, and the solution lies through illegal provisions which are already prescribed in a law and as part of the Constitution in Article 329. With a suitable conclusion which says, with an appeal to uphold the democracy in a better participatory and deliberatory form, you can end your answer, which would fetch you better marks. Hopeful that this discussion was useful for the minutes we have discussed. And with another day, I think I would be back with much more informative content. Till then, bye and thank you.